All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Leads to Deals podcast, where we talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. As you know, I believe sales is one of the greatest sports in the world, and my goal is to bring those elite world-class athletes of the sales game onto this podcast so we can learn from their story, from their journey, and see exactly how they're impacting their industry through sales and communication. And with that being said, somebody I literally just met moments ago, but I feel like I know him so well because I follow him intensely on Instagram and every social media platform. Adrian Llamas, better known as the Deal Fiend. Thank you for spending some time with me today, brother.
What's up, Scott? Likewise, man. Great to finally speak to you, and same for you. I've been following you for quite a while as well, so love that we're finally face to face here.
Yeah, dude, I think that me and you in the same China shop, that we would destroy the China shops. It's like the bull in the China shops. Dude, you got so much fucking energy. I literally was thinking about it before we got onto here. I was like, dude, I think you're the first person that I've been like intimidated with your level of fucking energy. Like, it's insane. Wow. Dude, you got A1, like balls to the wall energy all the time.
That's crazy. I feel more than that about myself than about you. You seem like a crazy, energetic character as well. Like,
well, and you know where I live. Like, you live in Miami, more or less, South Florida. I live in Colombia. And the fucked up part, excuse my language, to start cussing at the beginning, is people are always like, I know why he acts like that. And I'm like, dude, I don't even do drugs. Like, I'm in Colombia. But no. This is just like natural. Like, it's game time. So, and I'm excited about what I do.
Exactly. That's, I think, where a lot of our energy comes from. And once we start seeing success, and I'm sure you're the same way, for me specifically, other people have success together with yourself. That's what really drives us to get more and more. You know, that's where the Deal Fiend came from. I literally take this as a drug, not literally, but figuratively. and we just did a couple of deals now. We're in the process of trying to close a couple right now. Soon we're about to be affiliates with your company as well. So it's just fun, man. It starts to get really fun and just flows, you know.
Addictive. I think Fiend is really good, and we'll start at the name, and then I want to kind of go into your history. But this is true story. So I'm talking to my production manager offset just a second ago, and I was like, do you know what the word like fiend means? Because it's not a very common word used down here. And she was like, yeah. She was thinking it was like a fin, like a shark fin. And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, no. And all I could think in my head is Dave Chappelle. And we like, I need another one of them. And it's like, that's what a Deal Fiend is. It's like they're addicted to it. They need it. Their skin crawls without another deal at hand. And dude, what a great IG handle. What a great everything. Like the Deal Fiend is where it's at. How long you been going by that?
I'd say about 2 years now.
Dude, it's great. How'd you come up with it?
Full disclosure, I did not come up with this. Bobby Suarez, who's the owner of the company that I work at and a partner of mine, he came up with it. So soon you'll probably meet Bobby as well.
Yeah.
But he came up with, I don't know how, randomly, you know, I started working with Bobby about 2 years ago. So, and that's where it came from. And we just started running with it. Before you know it, 2 or 3 people in the office were starting to call me that. And I just ran with it. And I changed my name on IG to it.
Yo, I love that so much.
Ever since.
Dude, we got a bunch of nicknames. That also talks about a really good culture too. When people have nicknames as well too, that's a big thing here in our office as well too. And they're respectful, but some of them a little pointed as well. So I guess, man, listen, the point of this podcast and YouTube really is to get people to understand about how sales, that kind of pathway has changed our lives. I really don't know too much about your history at all, my man. I don't, and I'd like to kind of dive into it real quick. Like, when was the first time going back where you realized, like, oh, I kind of have a knack for sales or the art of communication? Like, you know, maybe even your first sales job, if you can recollect.
Man, I'll tell you, knack for sales since I was a laddie, since I was a young kid.
Okay.
I remember I must have been between 10 and 12 years old. My grandfather used to own a farm, and he used to have different fruit trees, and he used to sell them to local grocers. So I would go to his farm and I would bag up a few avocados, basically in plastic bags, and I would go door knocking. That was my first unofficial sales job. when I was 10, 12 years old, like I said, going around door knocking around my grandparents' neighborhood here in Miami, and went from there. Then shortly after that, I transitioned into washing cars. I would,
Yes.
instead of selling avocados, now I would knock on your door and I would say, hey, would you mind if you're interested in washing your car? And I would go ahead and use their water and wash the cars as well. I told a friend or two, and we started doing it as a crew. We would go around 2 or 3 of us and split the monies up. And that's where I started learning, how to barter, how to go back and forth, negotiating, the art of the deal. So I guess that's where I got my first exposure to sales. Yes.
Out of curiosity, real quick, as a kid, because very similar with us, mine was cutting grass, right? And it was just because I asked my parents for money, and they'd be like, bro, like, go get a job. This was pre-16. At 16, I was lining them up with jobs, but they're like, you got to go do something. Like, I'm not going to get, and I can only cut my parents' grass once. And so, like, was that for you too? It was like, hey, listen, like, I need some money, and I don't really have a bunch. I'm not swimming in resources over here. And is that what pushed you, or you were just already entrepreneurial at that age?
No, I would say it was a combination of I had a love for making money. Even as a youngster, I liked money. And then my grandfather encouraged it a lot as well. He was a businessman. So he was, hey, come pick some free avocados up from my farm. I'll put 2 or 3 in a bag, and I would sell them for like $1 or $2 a pop back then.
Nice.
And I would do a good amount. We'll sell a good amount. And before you know it, we were washing cars. Like I said, those were the good old days, man. I love those days.
And then what was like your first like official, like, you're going to get a pay stub type sales?
Radio Shack. For those that might know about.
You ain't that old. Come on. You ain't that old. Shit.
Yes, sir. For those of us that might know of that brand that died a few years back, Radio Shack. So I was probably 18 back then, Scott. And that was big sales culture, electronics. It was similar to it was like smaller version of Best Buys back then.
Yeah,
that's the way I could put it for those of us that might not know. So we would sell cell phones.
Hold on. Smaller versions of Circuit City back then. That shit was, that's how old you are.
City, but I figured a lot of the youngsters watching this wouldn't know what the hell.
Exactly, they don't know. They just tuned out. I screwed us up. All right, keep on going. My bad.
Well, that's why I went with Best Buy, but I literally thought about saying Circuit City before I changed it to Best Buy. So yeah, man, I met a couple great friends there. Radio Shack selling cell phones, electronics, TVs, little electronic parts that go into radios and stuff like this. And I had a sales quota, and spiffs. I've heard you say spiffs. That threw me back to went back to the Radio Shack days where they would pay us extra for selling certain cell phone services.
Yes.
I was selling Palm Trios back then, one of the first phones that you use with a stylus.
I remember them.
Yeah, we would get big bonuses for those. So that's where I first got my foot in the door. Slowly after that, not slowly. I was there for a few years, and then I went into banking, personal banking, opening accounts, servicing accounts, which is another form of sales. It was still sales.
Yeah.
I would try to get people to bring in deposits in order to grow the bank's deposit base, and then refer people out for mortgages and different loans and stuff like this. So more exposure to sales there, although a little different with a little bit of service involved.
Yeah, for sure. So, is that what opened? Because I've had a couple of people on now who literally started in banking, and then they kind of started to see the underbelly of the REI world. Were you able to get perspective there, and that's ultimately what piqued your interest to kind of go on this side, or was it something else that led you out of banking and then ultimately into the REI world?
No, it was something else. It was a combination of I wanted to be an investor and buy property and eventually be an investor and get exposure to that world. And then also banking, I felt, was like a dying breed for like future growth. So they were starting to let people go back then. So I saw kind of writing on the wall, and I determined that banking was not even close to what I wanted to do. I did a little bit of private banking too, and that was my final stint there. I was like, oh, no more of this. So I got into wholesaling almost by mistake. I started researching jobs related to real estate and investing. And I got an interview at this company, little little bit to knows to me, it was a wholesaling operation down here in Miami, and they ended up hiring me as a dispo agent, and then that's where I got my exposure to wholesaling, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's crazy too because after following your journey online, I was a little ambiguous, honestly, Adrian, as to what you did. Are you on the retail side or the investor side? So just to clarify, so I can kind of point, are you on both sides, right? You're playing both sides of the fence?
Of banking,
No, no, no.
we're talking about
Currently,
real estate.
currently in real estate, are you doing both retail, like the listing sides and the investor side, or what are you more focused on?
100% investor side. I do not no
100%
retail.
investor.
Yes, I have a real estate license, but I don't consider myself an agent. I just have the
Yep.
license basically to run comps for off-market investment deals. So
Okay.
100% investment.
Okay, and then now for the investor side of the wholesale, from the very first day you took your time or job as a dispo agent, which for everybody in the space who's maybe not familiar with wholesaling is a whole nother video topic, but you were essentially connecting deals to buyers. You had a portfolio or you had to find people who had capital that were looking for buy and holds, fix and flips. They couldn't source directly to the seller. They didn't want to necessarily always buy on market. So they would turn to Adrian Llamas and the companies that he's with, and they would say, hey, man, hook me up with the deal. You know my buy box. How long ago was that, I guess? How long you been in that side of the space?
About 5 years ago. So wholesaling, I
Nice.
got into as a disposition agent, selling the deals that the company would acquire. So the
Mm-hmm.
company would acquire the properties at below market rates, and then we will sell them to an investor for a profit, and
Yep.
still considering it to be under market for that investor. Then go ahead and make money on a fix and flip strategy or on a buy and hold strategy. And then I got a promotion in that company, went into acquisitions, which is the other side of the business. For those that don't know, wholesaling is acquisitions is basically in our strategy was talking directly to the sellers, trying to negotiate the best price to buy the property and get it under contract to then pass it on to an investor. So I started getting exposure to both sides, selling the deals and also acquiring them from the sellers on the front side. Also did some cold calling, some TC work,
Yeah.
also a combination of all four in one certain company. It was like a mix of all four, and that's what led me eventually to where I'm at now, which is sales director, training and hiring here in our company for acquisitions and dispositions.
I'd love to have you as my first impression in my sales company. Jeez. I'd be like, just sit in here and watch my Instagram. This is how excited I need you to be about real estate. But it's crazy because I tease my dispo agents, and sometimes you say it's like the dispo agents, acquisition guys who get burnt out or can't handle it anymore. Let's just say it's a little bit more of it's a softer job title, job role, et cetera, et cetera. So when you got promoted within that company or you moved out of dispo, you literally went up the mountain. Like that is going uphill. You are going uphill. It is tougher, in my opinion. It's a little bit harder. It's definitely a lot more no's. You're not just answering back and forth and hyping up a property. Like you're going in there into the weeds. So would you say that's like the most aggressive sales that you've done, right? Right. It's like acquisition for sure. Was you having to step your sales game up?
Absolutely. In this line of business, if you're not acquiring the property for a bare minimum 25% discount or maybe 30% discount or more, it's usually not a deal. So if you can imagine, there's not a lot of folks you would think that are open to selling a property for such a discount. There has to be a very good reason. So that's why we also spend a lot of money in marketing to find these folks that raise their hand. They call us first, and then we go out there and try to get them on a price that works for them and that works for us as well. And a lot of times, believe it or not, there's other factors that come into play, not only price. There's convenience of how slow or how quick you can close the deal. If you can accommodate finding a new property for the person to relocate. So a lot of moving parts that go into it besides price.
Yeah, I always say it's an exchange of value. It's like I know the customer has to still win when they get the deal. Even if they sold it at a 50% discount, they still have to win. That means that the perceived and candidly realized value bag, this big old bag of value that they're going to get, has to be more than the small bag of equity I'm asking them to shave off for that exchange. And so you hit it right on the head, whether it's, like the convenience factor, the guarantee, just competent people to interact with, somebody who's actually going to follow through on the transaction. Somebody's going to listen to them, for God's sakes. Somebody's actually going to call them back when you fill out a form. Somebody who's going to be a professional. There's all these small things that add up. And with you being in South Florida, I challenge anybody who's watching this podcast who's in the REI space or thinking about the REI space. There's like the top 5 markets in the nation that if you can do it there, like if you can do what he did, just blindly walk into a dispo office, work your way up and have your hand in so many of these different little departments that help see this industry. Like that is the battlegrounds. You could, you being the DOS there and your company literally just says, hey, so we were thinking about maybe going into Arkansas. Boom, everybody there is destroyed. No disrespect, but they're just destroyed. Because if you can do it in South Florida, you can do it anywhere, which makes you guys the elite of the elite. South Florida is not easy. Am I right?
I don't know, man. I was going to tell you probably one of the top 3 to 5 most competitive markets. A lot of money here, a lot of interest here, a lot of people moving in. So yes, we're arguably one of the hottest cities in the nation right now. So knock on wood, we've been blessed, specifically in the 2 counties that we're niched down in, being Miami-Dade and Broward.
If you think about it, man, I don't want to go light on this accomplishment, man. 5 years since you first stepped into this industry. Think about how many thousands of human beings have stepped into the REI world and didn't make it. It couldn't make it, chose not to make it, and then they're gone. And so for the guys and gals for the next 5 years who are watching this, like for you, to still kind of better understand your journey, did you kind of like self-teach yourself these sales skills? Did you have a particular sales mentor or 2 that really poured into you? Like, what did you do to be able to be the one out of, I don't know, 30,000 that's still here 5 years later, rocking it?
Yes, definitely didn't do it all by myself. Don't get me wrong, it definitely took a lot of self-teaching, what David Goggins would call the unseen work. So when you're by yourself, nobody's around, and you're doing stuff that instead of doing recreational activities, you're in the trenches, like studying your craft, stuff like that. So I did quite a bit of that. But I'd be naive to not mention at least 1 or 2 folks. Chris Voss being indirectly one of them. And one of the more direct trainers that I've learned from is Steve Trang. Steve's our guy. We're still training with Steve now. Every acquisition agent that has been under Steve's program while we've been in that program has been amazed and has gotten a ton of value from him. So I've learned almost everything that I know specifically on acquisitions from a combination of Steve Trang and Chris Voss.
Yeah. Wow. And so for everybody out there, those are the 2 names. The Art of Negotiating, the Chris Voss Way in his book. It's an excellent, amazing book. And Steve Trang's somebody that I've had come in and give presentations to all my affiliates before and followers. I was so blessed to meet him at a Collective Genius event not too long ago. I think he's a tremendous guy. And the thing that I love to hear about you saying that about him is probably the same thing, is people wouldn't look at us and be like, oh, we would vibe or get value, if you will, from Steve Trang's sales because his style is so different than ours. Yes. I'm a savage in the way I communicate and talk, but what I love about how he educates me is I almost look at him as like a doctor. Like he comes in, he talks to me in a calm, methodical, understandable, digestible way, and I get to take his skill set, guidance, whatever, and then just be myself with it. And so I'm so happy because I think he's a tremendous guy who does have a very valuable coaching platform.
He is. Anybody watching this, if you need guidance, assistance, specifically in acquisitions, talking to sellers to get properties at great prices, Steve Trang, Dr. Trang, as you just called him, is an excellent source. Steve, shout out to you. I wouldn't be the Deal Fiend without you, so thank you.
Yeah, I love it, man. I'm so great. I'm so happy to hear that. So great mentors, great platforms, and this is in the past few years, man. And so I know that you're on now the DOS acquisition, kind of the talent acquisition side, if you will, as well. Can we talk about, though, one last little before I get into it? Because I see it and I want to ask, in this 5-year journey, honestly, was there a point where you were like, you know what, dude, I need to go back to something more guaranteed or steady, or that you almost clocked out?
There maybe once. I definitely think about one time. Not many more than that, to be honest.
Yes.
Probably when it was likely right when COVID happened. It was that uncertainty that nobody knew what the hell was going to happen. I remember the NBA had just announced, that was like the tip that started domino effect. They announced that they were going to cancel some games or a certain amount of games, and then that's when I was working for a certain wholesale operation. They closed down shop and they said, "Hey, we're not going to open, not even after COVID." And I said, "Whoa, what about if this? How long can this take, etc." Should I look to go, even though there wasn't much that you could do in lockdown times. But back to the lockdown days, I probably thought about it back then. But then, as we know, that lasted maybe 2 or 3 months, and then it was off to the races, specifically here in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, where everybody started to flock to during those times.
Yeah, I saw a lot of fear in the marketplace down at that time. And what I tried to express to my affiliates and everybody else has said, we will never have, and I still believe it's true to this moment, and we're going to have something crazy happen, but a better scare factor urgency pitch than we have right now. Like, this is it. The world, when the sky is falling, that's when it's time to be on there talking to these sellers. Like, they're scared. Everybody's scared. Let's be that voice of reason and help educate them that if this goes super sideways, all this equity that you got is gone. So it's like, let's take advantage. Let's take advantage if it made sense, obviously, and it was value. I want to talk about what you said a second ago, because it just resonates in my ear. You were talking about David Goggins, who I love, who I listened to this morning. Like, I just love David Goggins.
Yes, me too.
And you said something about the hidden. What was the verbiage?
The unseen work.
The unseen work. I have a quote that I make all my young kids. I talk to them when they onboard, and I say, the most powerful piece of advice I could ever give you is hustle while you wait. The number one thing I could tell you a month, because they're in this training class and they got this pretty binder, and they're going to leave at 5:30 today, and they're going to go home and they're going to talk to their friends, and out of 25 people, maybe one person will open that book up and study like a champion and call somebody else and practice their script and understand the rebuttals and watch it. But that same thing that you just said, that is part of your DNA, is that it's hustling while you wait. When everybody else is kind of mentally checked out, physically checked out, they're done. You were putting in the reps to either practice your pitch or to listen to some calls or whatever it is that took it to be able to get to that next level. And so for those guys and gals are thinking about sales, it's like, hey, you want to be successful and you want to get the big checks. It's a full-time, like, it's a super full-time type role, but that's how you just get better, period, end of story.
Absolutely. The term no pain, no gain is very true.
Let's talk about business today. One of my questions on here is for you guys. It's like, okay, so what are your current marketing channels right now?
Current marketing channels, direct mail, started it relatively recently. Pay-per-click, We've been doing it for a while. Main source is TV commercials.
Wow.
We've been running, Bobby's been running the same commercial in town here for about 3 years now. Going on, 2.5, almost 3 years. Wow. I remember when he had just started, way back when, and it's been going quite well for us. A little unorthodox, quite capital intensive, specifically in a market like where we're in, where everything is just getting more and more expensive, cost of living, etc. That includes marketing costs. And with so much competition, during election years like we do now you have the politicians bidding with us, competing with us for commercials, airtime, and they're always going to have bigger pockets than almost anybody. So one of the reasons why we're looking to diversify our lead channels now to cold calling, which now is when we're bringing on, the monsters of Llamas Who Leads and your crew that you handle there. So I'm so looking forward to that, man. I got the guys ready to go. A lot of my guys follow you as well. So they're like, oh man, that's the guy that's going to be getting us our leads now. I'm like, yep, Scott's our guy now. So
can't wait. And I literally connected the dots right before we got on. I was so excited. So let me tell you what I normally tell people who are TV and why I'm excited that you're not the normal TV affiliate. And so for guys that are listening, I have this big monster like call company here, outbound lead generation call center, right? And I'll have customers who reach out to me who have only done TV, or maybe they graduated into TV and haven't done any other marketing channel in a while. Like maybe they started at cold calling, then they added cold calling and mail, and then they had cold calling, mail, and SMS, and then PPC, and then TV. But TV like really was hitting for them, so now they're only TV and PPC or just TV. The problem that's very unique about sales is actually good leads can make a good closer weak. And the reason why is because they have these really, really good leads, and they almost don't have to sharpen the sword or be as sharp because they're, there's a certain familiarity. So how do you feel about that in regards to like kind of TV leads or having to deal with closers where you give them the goods?
Good. Even though they're more motivated than I guess more of a less expensive lead channel, it's still not too easy. Just because of the market we're in, we find ourselves that almost every other seller that calls us is in a multiple offer scenario. So a lot of times, majority of the times, we're not the only investor there trying to buy the house. So we find when there's 2, 3, 5 bidders, the price just goes up, and sometimes it goes up to prices that you're like, how the hell is somebody making this make sense as an investment? Unless it's like an ovation in hiding type of thing that's not disclosed, or some sort of different creative transaction. But definitely, I could definitely relate to how you're saying a good closer might be almost spoiled by a Rolls Royce type of lead, where it's almost like, hey, here's the price. I need to sell right now. I'm ready to sign. What happens is a lot of the times the price, 90% of the time, the first price that the seller tells us never works. So we gotta bring them down to earth, and then we also have a mix. Like I said, we also have the direct mail and also pay per click, which are not as motivated, takes more touches. So at one point we did entertain cold calling, and it didn't go the best. This was a while back, and now we're looking to diversify into more of a cold calling type of leads.
Yeah, I think what you should find is that an operation like ours, it should be very in line with your PPC and higher results, because we just run them through such a filtration system. It's not your traditional cold call methodology in the slightest. And what you said about the seller's first price never being the right price, I do a training on this, Adrian. I think that you'd get a kick out of. But you remember as a kid, as a doctor would he would sit you on the bench, and then he'd hit your knee with a little hammer, and the thing would. So I got one of those hammers on my desk that it's a reflex. And so that's what I train my guys to understand in sales. Listen, that first price, it's involuntary. It's a reflex, just the same as I hit this with your knee. It's throw up, it's spit. Don't pay attention to it. Don't worry about it. It's literally a biochemical reaction that the seller is having to this fight or flight scenario. It is not a thought about answer. And so it's just a matter of, don't let that stick to you. Let that roll off of you. Make sure that you're not getting locked into that. And so I'm curious how you train on those types of things.
Yes, we train on price is irrelevant. In the back of our minds, we know a majority of the times price is very relevant, right? But we try to trick ourselves. We try to mentally play a trick on ourselves and say, hey, price almost is irrelevant. If they say a price specifically, especially in the early on in the interaction, it's kind of like we teach them to mirror it. We repeat the price. Oh, okay, jot it down and just keep going, and don't jump on that right away. Just keep going with the process of digging into the pain and seeing if we're a right fit or not before diving into the price.
I,
So
do you know what timeshare is, Adrian?
yes.
Okay. So that's how I got my sales. 23 years ago, I started in timeshare, right? I was a 20-year-old kid full of vigor, and I just went crazy into that industry. And I was like, and they turned me into a psychopath, right? A sales psychopath for full clarity. But what I learned, though, is the customers who I would shake their hand and they would be like, just so you know, I'm not buying today. Those were the people that were always buying. And it was just this involuntary thing that they were like, it's psychologically, they were like, okay, I know I'm very likely to say yes. I have to throw up these excessive defenses. And it just completely got me away, exactly as you guys said. It's secondary, it's third, it's all the way down the line. Forget that price. Let's just have a conversation and talk. Let's not get knocked out by it. Let's not be worried about those types of things. So I learned a lot just from that, just knowing that, like, but what do they say now in your industry? Buyers are liars and sellers are worse or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Grace Morby. Yes, sir.
Yep. So how do you guys do training today? What's your kind of like weekly or monthly training schedule as the director of sales?
We have a daily morning Zoom where it's a review of the previous day's appointments, and a lot of times we go into mini role plays in those interactions. So we use it as a combination as mini training sessions every day for 30 minutes,
Nice.
and also a review of the previous day's appointments. And we do it as a collective with all the acquisition agents on the Zoom, so everybody can hear different scenarios that their colleagues are coming across. Apart from that, currently we're on a twice a week call with Steve Trang. We're on the
Nice.
training regimen, 1 hour, 2 different days. So we're on with him as well. And then we also do 1 hour evening trainings once a week, in which I basically administer that one. And we train a few people outside of our operation in that Zoom call as well on acquisitions, and we take advantage also of having our own team on there, and we talk about our experiences, how we can learn from them, and so we have combination of 3 or 4 different hour-long Zoom calls, in addition to about 30 to 45-minute morning Zooms every morning, almost like a Zoom huddle.
What do you think are some of like the recent revelations or things that popped up? You're like, that's good. We covered that. Or you know what? They saw that through a perspective. What's been kind of the focus recently?
Revelations, I'd say more so on understanding that without trust, you're not going to get anywhere. And the main objective on these interactions is to gain trust. And from there, everything else flows. As you said, most of these sellers have a guard up, and they're trained to have a guard up because they feel like that person that's coming trying to buy their property is going to try to take advantage of them and get one up on them. So this is why you have to give them the illusion of control, as Chris Voss says, and just kind of roll with the punches.
Trust is big, man, in sales. They say no, like, and trust. And one of the things that I try to train on here is, I was taught this as a kid, a young guy. They would have 2 thermometers that they would draw on the board or bring one in. One was at 100. So it would be this one on the camera view. One was at 100 and one was at 0. And they always taught us is like, hey, forget your product, forget your price. That's over here on the second thermometer. You start at 100 degrees of sales resistance. You have to get sales resistance down all the way to 0 before you can go to sales acceptance. So how dare you talk about your features, benefits, and price before you've at least brought down that, or until you've brought down that sales resistance, because they don't know us. They don't know if we're out to hurt them. They don't know exactly. And so, especially you guys, which I think are all face-to-face, right?
Majority. No, we
Majority
do also, we do some closing over the phone. We call them,
Nice.
phone appointments. I'd say maybe 15% of our deals come from virtual, like that, over the phone. Usually we like to transition. If it starts off over the phone, we like to walk the property either right before giving the offer or right after. And what you said about sales resistance, sorry to cut you off there. I want to just touch on this. We actually went over this last week, is how do you get past the sales resistance is by gaining their trust. And how do you gain their trust? Most of the time is by showing them that you're listening to them, using words, phrases that they use, mirroring, labeling, and making them feel like understood. Not necessarily that you have to agree with them, but that you understand where they stand. And that slowly starts bringing the sales resistance down.
Yeah, me and you, literally, I'd love to have the opportunity to sit in one of your guys' trainings. I'd love to participate, et cetera, like whatever.
Yes, likewise.
But I think sometimes too, the sales resistance. I always say a customer can smell commission breath for sure.
Yes.
They can smell it a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
They can smell when somebody's not being genuine. The most important part of any of my sales presentations was actually before I shook their hand, before I arrived at their house. That pre-game, that pre-mental, that I'm going to go in here and I would envision and do everything I could to forecast that success before I ever shook their hand and feel confidence. But two, it's also about being like a good person where that aura can be felt. And even if it's over the phone, if you don't think a customer can feel a smile through the phone, you are mistaken. They can feel a smile through the phone, and all those things, in my opinion, humbly, work towards, like you said, bringing down that sales resistance and increasing trust.
It sounds like you're a sales junkie, just like me.
A junkie. I damn sure am. All right, cool, man. So I have a question for you guys with your face-to-face, since you're a director of sales. Same thing I would say to some of my other guys. How are people, if you were going to give a tip as a DOS, you're responsible ultimately for the team's numbers. How are you calibrating a sales agent's presentation? How are you assisting them with the presentation when you can't just pull the recording and play back what they said and how they said it, etc.?
How am I assisting in that? I usually try to ask them for almost it's not going to be exact, but a play-by-play of what happened and how it transgressed. So we try to talk about, okay, so when you gave your first offer, what was the response? How did they act? Not only what they told you, but how they acted physically, body language. Were they up on their chair? Were they sitting back, legs crossed? Were they looking around, looking down when they were telling you this, etc.? So we try to speak about how each step went. Did you give them the upfront agreement? Did you ask certain questions about the pain? And I'll ask them who has input on the sale. If they're unsure, they're a little hesitant, that means they probably didn't ask that. Or if they don't know, they didn't ask that question. That's one of the things we want to find out. Who else has input? Yeah. So we try to do a play-by-play if they can't record it. Sometimes we ask them to try to record it on their phones if they're in person, and I want to coach them on it. So that's how I try to calibrate as well as possible. I try to ask them to reenact how it went. And then we use those scenarios. If I see, or they tell me, hey, I need help on this, or I lost the deal because of this. Okay, perfect topic for tomorrow's Zoom or this week's Zoom call. And then we tackle it right then and there. So it's fresh in the mind.
I know you feel the same about this, but you also look for people's patterns too. Like if you're getting the same objection over and over, then emphatically it's something the agent is saying that's causing that objection. Because you all of a sudden get a random agent on the floor and they're like, hey, they all say that they want to sell after Christmas. It's like, well, or after summer. It's like, okay, well, I've heard that from you 3 times and I've heard that from nobody else in the past 60 days. So there's something that this agent is saying. And so I applaud you because it can't be easy. And the reason why I believe what you're doing is so powerful, but also can't be easy is because human nature is to not blame themselves. So it takes a really good, transparent rep to come in and be like, I probably could have, but this is what happened versus trying to paint a picture like, it's not my fault. No. They said this, and then the sister walked in. The dog peed in the floor, and then all of a sudden everything got thrown out. So, man, I applaud you for that. What advice would you give to the young guy or gal who's thinking about being like, all right, I've been in banking, I've done this as well too. His story sounds kind of like mine. Like maybe I want to take a crack at the REI world. And go into it and work for a firm or kind of start trading paper at a small level on my own. What do you think?
I would say look to link up with an operation that's already doing it. Part of what you just said. They might have to bite the bullet and work for free. That's likely one of your best routes. Look for somebody that's reputable and you could tell has a good track record and can show you receipts. Look to join their team, and if they don't have an opening, offer to work for free. Hey, what can I do for free that I can add value to the team, and then at the same time I can learn? So I know we live in a very entrepreneurial age where the social media and everybody wants to paint the picture or tell you you need to be an entrepreneur and own your own business, and I'm all for that. But specifically when you're in this scenario that you just said, just younger, starting out, looking to see if this is for you or not, I tell you to try to link up with a. It doesn't have to be a huge operation, but somebody more than a 2 or 3 man operation that has
Yeah.
certain years of experience and that has a lot of scratches on their knees, meaning they have a lot of mistakes that they've done and a bunch of walls they ran into, so that you know how to get around the walls that they ran into.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. It's my number one. It's like, just go find this office. And the REI space is pretty welcoming to that. If you're willing to come and grind out for free, we'll let you sit in the office. We're going to give you some grunt work. You're going to get to see behind the scenes. And what you just said about the entrepreneurial side, dude, I was 17 years working in a company for people before I ultimately found just it was the right time and, XYZ happened. But I was the CEO of my damn self. And so everybody in sales, we get to wake up every single day, Adrian. We either get ourselves a pay increase or we give ourselves a pay decrease. Every single day. It's one of the unique luxuries of this job. You want a pay raise? You know what? Shit, tomorrow I want a pay raise. All right, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to create a deal out of the sky because you have that power to do that. And that's why I love this industry in particular, because it's got all the tools that are there for you to be an entrepreneur inside of another company, because there's a lot of protection, there's a lot of safety, and you continue to grow. And so I couldn't agree more. My director of sales in our Orlando office is King Kong. Like, I love that guy, and he's doing amazing, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, man, I think there's a lot of value in getting into the room and being around the right people for a good chunk of time.
For sure. Is that
All right,
Mr.
man.
Q? Mr. Q up
It's
there in
Anthony.
Orlando?
Yeah, Anthony.
Anthony.
Not Alex. Anthony.
Alex, right. Yeah, I've met both of them. I follow both of them on social media too. Cool guys, man. Yeah, they've been crushing it for a bit too. I saw them. I didn't get to talk to them, but I saw them in Orlando at an event probably like a month ago.
Yeah, dude, they're quality guys. All right, so listen, dude, I think that what I enjoy about this conversation is I know it's the first of many. There's going to be an opportunity for me and you to be able to work together, to work with your team. Not everything is just streamlined. There's going to be some roller coaster to it, but as long as the roller coaster always gets higher, then we're all turning in the right direction. But I'm confident that my leads will be in the best of best hands, where people are going to work the shit out of them, because I see your passion for sales, man. I see your desire to be able to help the customer, et cetera, and it excites me. So where can people follow you so that way they can see more about the Deal Fiend?
You can follow me on all social media platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn at the Deal Fiend, just as you spell it here, at the Deal Fiend. Feel free to send me a direct message. I'm always looking to add value to folks, whether you're in my market or not. However we can help each other. One hand washes the other. I'd love to help anybody that I can.
Yeah, probably the best editing and best content. You got to be in the top 4% of this entire industry, bro. Your edits and your content, dude. You have, honest to God, you have one of the most, if not the most enjoyable content to watch. And so if you don't follow at the Deal Fiend, you need to, because he gets you excited about sales.
Thank you, man. I'm humbled by that. I truly am. That's definitely not me. Shout out to our video guys, short form media, Chris and Jay.
Nice. Yeah. Shout out to them, guys. All right. And listen, also, guys, if you're an investor, if you're a wholesaler, so if you're an investor and you need some of these off-market deals in the South Florida market, reach to at the Deal Fiend. If you're a wholesaler and you need help with a deal, particularly on the dispo side, and he's a good enough guy, he would help you as well in strategizing on obtaining the deal. He may seem out of touch on out of reach because he's so popular and got such good content on IG, but as you can see, he's an average savage. He's here to help and get it in while he can. So make sure you reach to him at the Deal Fiend. And guys, if you found value in this podcast, if we were able to get you a little bit excited about the sales industry, the REI space, just do me a favor and also subscribe to us. I appreciate you guys liking and commenting as well. And Adrian, I know me and you will be crossing paths many times, celebrating over many deals over the next upcoming months, man. And I appreciate you coming out, brother.
Thank you for the invite, Scott. Can't wait.